Welcome to Grant the Mic, the podcast for nonprofits, grant professionals, and grant consultants who want to elevate their grant game and make a bigger impact. I'm your host, Allison Boyd, founder of Boyd Grants and the Boyd Grants Academy. Each week, we dive into the world of grant funding, sharing tips, insights, and stories from experts, leaders, and funders themselves. From building a strong grant-seeking culture to collaborating with consultants to crafting a proposal that truly wins support, this is your go-to place for actionable strategies and inspiration. Whether you're just starting your grant journey or you've been writing proposals for years, we're here to help you learn, grow, and get results. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's grant the mic. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our next episode on Grant the Mic. Today, we are going to talk about what it means to work with consultants and how to engage them effectively. So, as a result, I am bringing with me to this podcast today, Arcee. Arcee works with us with our contract with Tarrant County College District. We have worked with them for years, and Arcee kind of came in the middle of our contract with them. So I'm excited to hear and learn from her kind of what all of the things she wished she knew, what it's like to really work with a consulting firm, and what to kind of expect from working with a consulting firm in general. So let's get started. And Arcee, can you do me a favor and just talk to me a little bit about your history, your background, who you are, what you do, all of those wonderful things.
Sure. So first, Allison, thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you this early afternoon / late morning while we do this. So my name is Arcee Fleets. I am the Director of Grants Development here at Tarrant County College. I have been in this position for a little over a year, but I have worked in higher ed for over 20 years. And I've done 8 of those years, actually 9 of those years now with grants, and then 12 of those years within facilities as a space manager, as a space utilization efficiency expert. So I've had very different positions within higher ed. I have done a stint as a consultant, kind of building out long-range planning financial software when I worked within facilities and figuring out how to help universities leverage that a little bit better. So within higher ed space, I've done a bunch of different things. I am thrilled to be back doing grants. It's kind of like I come full circle because I started there and now I'm coming back to do it. So yeah, I'm just very excited about higher ed in general. I love figuring out how to help higher ed be more efficient, be more innovative, try to be a little bit more entrepreneurial in how they pursue things, and just approach things from a little bit more of a strategic lens, considering the fact that higher ed can sometimes get kind of bogged down in just, this is the way we've always done things. So I think I kind of bring to the environment a little bit of disruption in that way to maybe be a little bit more innovative.
And I think that's okay. Disruption can be good. I think it's great. I love that you started in grants. I did not know this about you. You started in grants and then now you're full circling. And I feel like grants never get out of our system. But I feel like my favorite piece about working with you and your team is you have now brought in this whole project management perspective. And our team, like, we live and die by project management and those, like, you do step 1 to get to step 2 and what is going to influence all of those factors. And I think that has really enhanced our working relationship because you do have that understanding of it's management. Really, writing is so important, but half the battle is managing the process and making sure that we drive to the completion of the application and working together. So tell me a little bit about walking into a already done contract with a consulting firm who you knew nothing about, and what does that look like, and how did that shift what you thought your role was going to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think for me, because of my experience within higher ed, I've worked always with consultants at some point in time. And when you work in facilities, you work with consultants all the time because contractors are consultants, architects are consultants. You're constantly doing that, right? So when I got here and I heard, okay, well, we have this external grant writer, I'm like, oh, okay, so no problem. We're going to figure out how we do this. And I can't even remember what the first project was that we worked on, but I remember when we started it and you guys kind of gave us everything that we needed. I knew instantly that we were approaching it differently because I was like, okay, so we're going to be responsible for this and you're going to do this and we're going to have these check-ins and I'm going to do this and the budget's going to look like this. And you guys were kind of like, what is happening? What is happening? Because it was just there were steps and there were steps on our end too, right? And one of the things that I think is really important when you work with consultants in general, and this is true regardless of whether you're talking about grants or whether you're talking about something else. There's two ways that you can approach work with a consultant. The first way is you identify this huge gap that you have in your organization, and you basically say, we don't have the manpower, the bandwidth, or the capacity to do this thing. So we're going to bring in an external provider to do that thing. And you basically are paying them to complete a task, right? And so at that point, it's like, I've got this grocery list of all these things that I need you to do. So please just go down the list. And as you do it, cross them off so that I know that they're done. And that becomes extremely transactional. Okay, it's an extremely transactional relationship when you're doing it like that. And that's useful in some instances, but in my opinion, this is not that. The more effective way to manage consultant relationships is more like a partnership. It's a partnership that has nothing to do with the transactional element, right? Because the grant itself is an output. The grant is something that is a byproduct of everything else that happens through the process of the grant writing. So the most important thing within that type of relationship is the relationship itself.
Right.
What are we doing? How are we working together? You've provided us with a timeline that you feel you need to be successful. We need to be able to say, okay, can we work within that timeline so that they're successful and we're successful? And it's this back and forth partnership where we're working alongside each other. We're augmenting the experience of the other side to make sure that the end product is as good as it can be. Sometimes that means that we're going to lean into you guys a little bit for some stuff. Other times, and most of the time, if you're doing it right, you're leaning into us a lot because at the end of the day, we are the people working in the space and we know who do you need to talk to, what are we actually trying to accomplish, and it's a relationship that's made up of all these varying parts, and we're managing that relationship. As we write the grant is ancillary. It is the result of the relationship. And everything about what we do until the minute that we press the button and hit submit, that's fine. That grant is gone. But the relationship that we have, that's what's going to get us to the next one. That's what's going to solidify whether we can be successful or not. And when you deploy it in that manner, as opposed to the first way, when it's the first way, as soon as you hit the button, that's it, you're gone. Thank you very much. We'll see you later.
Right.
That's not an effective way of managing a consultant relationship when we're trying to make it a partnership. We need you guys often, right? And there are times where no matter what, we'll look at something and we'll say, we just don't have the internal capacity to deal with this, right? And, for anybody who's listening, we are a small team, right? We are a small team. I only have 3 grants resource specialists, and I have 1 admin that is like a Swiss Army knife and can do a million different things. But we're small and scrappy, and so because we're small and scrappy, we have to find ways to make our resources work for us. And one of the best ways to do that is to leverage that consultant relationship when we know that we can't manage it on our own. And by doing that, the relationship is so strong that there are times where you guys will reach out to us and say, hey, we found this opportunity. If you guys want to work on it, here's what we're going to need in order to get started. And we'll look at it and internally we'll say, we think we got this one. We can manage this one in-house. we go back to you guys, I go ahead and let you know, hey, we're going to manage this one on our own. We got to tighten up our people inside to make sure that they know how they're writing. And it is such a fluid relationship that there's no hard feelings. You guys are like, okay, great, awesome. You guys rock it out. Let us know if at any point you need us to review anything. And that's the other thing, right? Is that when you do it like that, the benefit is you guys are always really great to say, hey, if you want us to look at your last draft, we'll take a look at that. We know that you guys are going to work on it on your own, but this becomes such a fluid relationship that it just works. It's a daily thing. You're part of our daily lives. You're part of our daily interactions. You're not here, but we know we can use you when we need you. We know we can talk to you. We can reach out at any point. And it really does become this partnership where you guys are just a constant element within our office. And we know that we can reach out when we need to. And I feel like that is the more successful element of a consultant relationship, right? And like I said, I've seen all kinds, and
Right.
I've seen all kinds, and I've even been all kinds, right? And I've been all kinds, I've seen all kinds, and at the end of the day, if you can make it a partnership where you're collaborating, that's always more fruitful.
So that's so true, because even with our own clients, every client relationship is, we have a standard of the way we want to operate, which is building that true relationship where we do just become an extension of your team. Sometimes you use us more than other times. Sometimes we're the one bringing you an opportunity and you're the one who's like, we're going to take this on in-house. And honestly, that is a win to us, because that means that we have helped you be strong enough that you're able to do it in-house. And if you need us, great, but we're here as your silent cheerleader and saying, reach out when you need us. We're here to help. But I think when we went into this business, that was one of the one pieces of advice that I always thought was, I never thought it would translate to 17 years later. Here we are. But it was always, if you align, like your ethics and your relationship standards align with your client, it's going to be a more fulfilling engagement. And that is so true. We have seen that, especially in the grants world, the less transactional we are, and we'll do one-off proposals for organizations, and that's fine, because sometimes that's all that they need. But the more relational that you are, the actual better opportunity they have in winning that grant award, because you have become part of that organization in different ways. So we don't write your budgets. We have never written your budgets for you, because honestly, we believe you need to know what you want, right? We know that you guys need to figure out, is this even feasible long term? And what you have done, Arcee, is you've said, okay, you don't write my budgets, fine. We're gonna know this up front, and that's gonna help drive the written part of the work that we do, and the attachments and things like that. And that is so important, because your strength is knowing your organization well. And then the other piece I think is very important for people to remember is, you work for a college district. It is a large college district, but yet you are still a very small team when it comes to the grand scheme of things. You bring in millions of dollars in grants. Your team does that with a lot of external people coming into play. And I think sometimes when people are listening, they're like, oh, but they've got it all together. They're a college district. They can do all of these things. Nope. Most of the college districts have very tiny teams, right? That have high expectations of yield and what they should be able to bring in. So I think great to recognize that you are a small team, but you have, I went to a conference 2 days ago, and they were like, you can't do everything. So you hire people who can, and y'all happen to hire an external team to support the overflow and just the different things that you don't have the strengths in, that we can bring the strengths, and y'all fill it all in the way it needs to be done. But yeah, so kind of, if you want, talk a little bit about we know what working with us looks like from our side of it, but when you're dealing with your staff and because you deal with more than just your team, you deal with the chancellor, you deal with all of that. So what does that look like when you're having to tell them, how do you work with Boyd grants?
Yeah, so I think one of the important things to understand also alongside the consultant discussion is us as the interior team, right? Because when we go ahead and we sign our invoices to you, it's coming through the grants office, right? And so we're the team that works closest with you. But at the same time, I have to go to all the various stakeholders at the campuses and at the district level to share out these are the grants that we're going to pursue. This is why we do it. And one of the things that I'll say that's it's a little bit different about the way that we approach it, and you and I have talked about this, is we don't really approach grants in what I would consider to be the traditional way that people approach grants. We look at them almost like a venture capitalist would look at a startup organization. And so when we do a grant, let's say, for instance, like right now we're working on one and it's a 4-year grant, it's due in a couple of weeks. We actually are not paying as much attention to what's going to occur in that 4-year funding period. We're paying more attention to what is going to occur the minute that the grant is over. We're looking at 4 years and 1 day later, because the way that we're looking at it is that is when we as an institution are going to have to figure out how do we sustain this particular grant project, right? And so for us, our approach is extremely future focused, it's extremely long range, and it's very strategic to the point where we don't even apply for opportunities if that long range goal has not been vetted first. Doesn't matter how good it looks for the funding period, we only care about what happens after. So that's very unique. I'm not going to say it's a yeah, I'm not going to say it's a unicorn. I'm sure there's probably other people who are doing it that way too, but it's definitely more strategic than this kind of reactive way of just there's a grant, apply for it, and we'll roll the dice when when the funding period is over. We don't approach it that way, right? We approach it from we care more about what's happening when we don't have this external funding, because that means that we are going to have to figure out, do we have to go find additional external funding? How will we leverage that if we can't institutionalize it? It becomes a whole other examination in whether or not this is actually going to be a scalable solution that we are going to take through various phase transitions in order to be successful and to provide our students with the resources that they need, right? So because of that, I have to go and I have to kind of sell these to the presidents, to the chancellor, to the vice chancellors, to the CFO, right? I have to take this and say, here's all the reasons why this grant opportunity is going to be really good for TCC after the funding period. And that's really where we focus, right? And so because of that, circling back to how we work with you guys, because of that long range future focus element, it's important and it's beneficial for us to have you as an external partner because you're with us right now while we're attempting to get it. And the notion is that as we continue and at the end of that, you're going to be there also on what might need to come next if we can't institutionalize, right? So this notion of how you stay with us through the process is kind of like what you were talking about earlier, right? You are part of our team. You're part of our team. You just don't have offices here, right? You're not taking up any of our real estate, right? But at the same time, you're part of our team. You're with us while we look at it. You're with us as we evaluate it. You're with us as we consider what we would do with it next. And a lot of that ends up being a little bit more discipline or pathway focused, right? Because as we're looking at it, okay, it's a nursing grant. Okay, well, what all are we doing with nursing? Where's this going? Are we trying to fund equipment? Are we trying to fund apprenticeships? Are we trying to fund scholarships, right? Where are we going next, right? Well, when you're with us through the process of what we're doing, you're also with us as we figure out where to go next.
Yep.
And that's something that for us is really important because we don't actually know if we're going to get lines to hire more people, if we're going to be able, and I mean, everybody kind of knows right now with the way that the federal situation is, it's highly likely that we're going to be operating with this small team for the foreseeable future. And then what are we going to do, right? And We go after everything if it looks like it's going to be good, right? And we look at really non-traditional kind of approaches. We do foundation grants. We try to enlist partners in the community and stuff like that, and we play a role. So everywhere that we have to leverage in a different way, it's useful for us to be able to know that we've got you there to be like, hey, we're going to go ahead and we're going to attempt this right now. Don't know what it looks like. Can we figure it out? What do you guys think? We leverage your expertise and your experience, right? Have you done this before? If you have, what did it look like?
Yep.
What was the requirements? How heavy of a lift is it going to be for us if we have to manage it on our own? So even then, we leverage your expertise in asking, hey, do you guys even think we can do it if we do it on our own? And I love the fact that because of the relationship we have, you answer me with full transparency and candor and say, yeah, I think you guys could do it if you wanted to. So just, rock on, let us know if you need us.
Yep. I think also kind of one of my favorite things is this has been a long standing contract. And so we have built deep relationships. I have worked with a lot of the same writing teams over the years. And y'all, let me just tell you, embedding in a college is hard because you're an external person coming in telling academia how the appropriate way to respond to a NOFO or an RFP. And we're kind of usually the guiding source of, no, you cannot add that in because of this. And y'all, that's hard sometimes. And that's been a long runway of building that relationship. But my favorite part is recently I was able to tell Arcee, hey, I know we're not working on this grant for you with this funder, but they're doing a conference. You need to be there.
Yep.
You need to be at that conference. You may never apply in this next year, but you need to be there and you need to start building that relationship. And because we have such deep understanding of the work that Tarrant County is doing, right? We're able to say, you're not there yet for that application, but you really need to start building a voice and a spot in their whole funding process. And by starting, you're going to go to that conference. Please go,
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was such a fun way to say, we know you well enough that we know it's on your radar to do, your sustainability long-term radar to do. You might not do it yet, but start going to these things. And I think that opened up some doors for y'all. And it's not in our contract to tell you those things. It's not in our contract to say, if it was in our contract, we would say yes to every opportunity. And I think that's important to know who you're aligning your work with, right? Whether it doesn't matter who you're working with, you need to have a clear understanding of, are they going to be in it for us as the organization, or are they going to be in it for the bottom line for their company? And that's important because if you're doing something that's completely transactional, then someone isn't getting the best interest. And truly, we're not unique in what we do, but we do solely approach our contracts with what is going to be in the best interest for that client. And sometimes that means that we don't write every grant. And sometimes that means that we do things because we just inherently love y'all and want to add value to what you do. Because I know in the future, depositing those little trinkets of goodness is going to make for a better relationship. And that's almost more important to me than the transactional, did we complete a grant? We live and die by our deliverables. And we've got someone on my team that is like, where are we at on our deliverables to this client? And I'm so grateful for that. But those deliverables are only important if we're truly doing what is right for the organization we're working with. And I think that's important for people to understand is, yes, they are external, but do they honestly have the best interest of your organization as a whole in that contract that you're building out?
Yeah, absolutely. And back to the comment about the conference, that you sent me to. We got on a call with that organization 2 days ago to talk about, yeah, what would this look like and what would we do? And but once again, we're back to, if I have to drive any one point home, it is The relationship is the win. The relationship is the goal, right? The goal is not the grant.
Right.
As bad as that sounds, right? And the goal is not the grant. It isn't, because we all know that in this age of AI, you could probably go pop that thing in a chat GPT and it would pop it out and you'd submit something.
Right.
Now, whether it got funded or not, who knows, right? But the grant is not the goal. The goal is the relationship. And what does that relationship look like in a fruitful way, right? Where we know that you guys, I'm going to say, I know you guys, when we write a grant that you guys are not helping us with, I know you're cheering for us. I know you are. You're cheering for us. And you're like, man, I hope they get that, right? And I mean, we have an internal directive, you know, where I'm supposed to assist our campus partners and all our campus stakeholders and customers in, let's write grants together. Let's get them a little bit more comfortable in grant writing, right? We want them to be grant savvy, right? We have a chancellor who is the epitome of a transformational leader. And for her, them understanding what it means to write a grant, to manage that project, to understand the nature of what it means to do that in service of our students, that is important to her. So it's important to us as an office to deliver on that. But we know that there are times where the grant is so large and the ask is so intricate that we cannot do it on our own, right? And at that moment, it's amazing for us to be like, got to call on Boyd. We need Boyd to help us with this one. We just can't manage it. And then at that point, what we're doing at that, we're leveraging the resources we have that are strong. We turn around, we leverage the resources you have that are strong. And at that point, it clicks. It's just magic, because it's what we're going to focus on where we're strong. You're going to focus on where you're strong, and boom, we're going to do it together. And that's what's going to pop out. And the beauty of doing it that way is you guys have also kind of learned our rhythm, right? As you talked about, you've worked with different people who've been in my position, right? And when I've come in, I'm sure that how you guys approach the content questions, how you approach the timeline, all of those things have shifted a little bit as a result of me and how we kind of manage things differently. But you wouldn't know that without having that tight relationship to able to be like, okay, they can do this for a little bit longer. We can give them a little bit more time here. You know, you talked about the budget. I'll go ahead and say, for us, budget always drives narrative. We approach everything from the budget and we let the narrative kind of percolate behind that.
We're budget first lovers also, but it doesn't mean that it's the only way to do it. But man, when it's done that way with y'all, we're like, okay, you need a little bit more time on your budget. That's gonna drive how well we can write. So take it. And then we're able to adjust the timeline. And my writers can do a truncated timeline if they've got a clearer understanding of where the money is gonna go.
Yeah, that part, right? So knowing that, okay, they're really, really strong on budget because for them, that's kind of the biggest lift that they have, then it helps you guys later. You can buy a little bit of time on the narrative because you know when you get the budget's in good shape. And of course, the other thing that helps us is we have an amazing budget analyst who spends, I mean, she is just amazing at being able to sit there and understand, and where did you do this and how did you do this and what's the budget justification. And so having that person also, I can't stress enough how much having a budget analyst or somebody who only does the money, right, plays a role in how successful the remainder of the project is. And once again, we're back to the relationships, right? Because for any other small team out there who doesn't have their own budget analyst, you got to go find somebody in finance. You got to go make a friend over in finance, make a little friend, take them to coffee, buy them a cherry Coke. I don't know, right? Whatever it is, just do something to have that person be able to come in and help you with that, because so we're back to talking a little bit about the customers, right? And the campus stakeholders. They're amazing at writing and talking about what they're good at, and they are all here for the students. I mean, that is one of the beautiful things about when you work in higher ed, is that everyone is here saying, what are we doing for our students? But they're not financiers, right? So the minute that we start talking about, so what are you going to spend the money on? That's where they get tripped up. right? And so you got to have that person who can come in and kind of help with that and say, I've gone through the RFA, I understand the budget template, I know what you guys need to be doing. This percentage needs to be for this percentage needs to be for that. They are an amazing resource to be able to really kind of home in on what they need to be focused on.
That is so true. Smaller teams feel like, oh, well, we can't do it as well because we don't have that team. But man, make friends. Make friends in your
Mm-hmm.
finance. If they don't exactly know what to do, they need to figure it out because they got to implement that on the finance side anyway. And so if you can, I used to have a friend in finance when I worked for a college district at the very beginning of my career. And I found out what her favorite snack was. And I would be like, I need to get on your calendar snack. And so
That's right.
we would just go through and I would say, okay, this is what the NOFO says. This is what we need to do. This is what the team wants to do. I need you to make it work. And she would
Mm-hmm.
just eat her little snack and we'd talk it through and she would tell me where the issues were. But you have to be cross-functional, right? You have to
Yes.
be able to cross that divide of departments and say, we have to do it as a whole, and then be able to work together as a team because it's a team effort. And that has nothing to do with the contract and working with consultants, but that's just a bonus value add. Make
Right.
friends. Uh,
Right. Right. Yeah. And we circle back to relationships,
yes.
right? This is all about relationships. Everything that comes after is just gravy because that's what came out of the relationship. But that is, I've, it's just the most important thing in any of these interactions and partnerships is how strong are the relationships? That's where the deep work needs to be. I'll say that. Don't let the deep work be the grant itself. The deep work needs to be the relationship.
Yep. And so I have a friend who we worked together years ago, early on in the Boyd Grants world. And to this day, she'll call me and be like, hey, um, we're not working together, but do you know in this specific NOFO where this is? I know it's there, but where is it? And I'll be like, give me
Hmm.
10 minutes. And I go
Hmm.
and I find it and I tell her how she needs to tell her story and why it's important and stuff. And she's like, got it, great. But that is years of relationship building. And
Right.
honestly, whoever you hire, you should have the trust that they're going to have your back long beyond the contract. Because sometimes contracts are going to end. You're either going to outgrow each other or the budget just isn't going to be there.
Right.
And that happens. And it's not necessary. You don't want it to end because of um, work that was not done well. You want it to
Right.
end because you've outgrown each other, but you also want to walk away knowing I've got them in my back pocket if I need to. So,
Right. Right. And I mean, I'll say this also. If we think about relationships in general, whether it's work, personal, romantic, children, right? Whatever it is, successful relationships evolve
yeah.
because they understand we've got all these different people and they're at different points. We can move in the same direction, even if we're not moving in it, we can move together, right? If we evolve together, right? So relationships also, if you want them to be successful, you have to find, when you find the right people, how are we growing together? How do we grow together? How do we shift together? We're shifting as an organization, and so how are you going to shift alongside us, right? And partners are going to do it,
Yep.
right? When you have a good partnership, you'll understand where that's going and you're excited for that too. You're excited for what's to come. You're like, yeah, okay, I see where this is going. Okay, let's pivot like this. And we are very much an office that is nimble and agile in that way. And so it just speaks a little bit more to strong relationships come when you trust each other, you assume good intent, you begin from the point of, hey, you're here as a resource, we're going to go ahead and we're going to work together to make this good, and there's trust, and at that point then you can evolve together too.
Yep. And I know we are coming up on time, and so I want to be mindful of your time. But if you could give anyone a piece of advice for when they are writing out their scope of work or their expectations to work with a consultant, it's hard to put in relationship building. what advice would you have someone going to work with a consultant to put into their scope?
So if you can't put relationship building in the scope of work, right? Because I get that, right? What I would recommend is, even before you get to that point of a scope of work, spend some time thinking about, how are we going to be future focused? How are we future focused? Where do we want to be in 10 years, in 15 years? Because the scope of work can include how we want to grow and what we think we will need from you in the future as the relationship continues. And the beauty of that is that you are also allowing that consultant partner to understand your vision,
Yep.
your mission. Where are you going, right? They know where you are. You need help. They know that. That's why they're here. You don't need to tell them you need help, right? You need to tell them where you're going, and to let them have the opportunity to decide, do we want to go along with them? Do we want to get on this ride? Because this is where they're going to go. And at that point, if the consultant says, yeah, that sounds awesome, then you're good. You're good, because everybody knows, here's the mission, here's the vision, here's the goals, here's the objectives. Because trust me, that consultant, that will be their mission, vision, goal, and
Yeah.
objective alongside you, if they know what it is.
Yep. They'll get on board because it's clear expectations. And I think
Mhm.
that's part of it is, like, in our contracts, we put in what we expect from the client and what the client can expect from us. But what helps define that is, that when we say we need things by within these days, well, first of all, you're beholden to that. And we cannot be held accountable if you don't give us those things. Well, that's cut and dry. That's things that have to be in there. But if my team knows in advance that sustainability is a long-term goal of Tarrant County College District, well, we know that we need to find opportunities that are going to help them be sustainable. And what
Mhm.
does that look like? And we know that every conversation that we have with them needs to drive to their long-term goal. Yes, you're going to have deliverables because we have to have outcomes and outputs and, all of the great things the logic model tells you to do.
Mhm.
So you're going to have those things, but if you don't have an end goal in mind to drive to get there, it makes for a more difficult contract and relationship along the way. Because if the
Absolutely.
target is forever moving, you have nothing to deem success by, you know?
Well, and then the internal team, right? So if we're using us as an example, the internal team that is trying to enlist y'all's help, they can't tell you what success looks like either. They can't tell you whether they are we meeting the objectives. They don't know,
Yep.
right? And so you will augment and support what our objectives are. So as long as we know what they are and we can tell you, then you guys can say, yeah, that sounds awesome. Or you can even be like, you know what? No, this isn't for us, right? That's not the right fit for us and what we're trying to do. And then at that point, then okay, fine, that's good. But without the goal of the team that's trying to enlist your help, you guys are gonna struggle to understand where we want to go. And it doesn't matter where we are, and it doesn't matter where we've been. All that matters is where we're going.
Yep.
So that's the most important thing.
Yep. Well, Arcee, I'm so glad you joined us today. And speaking of relationships, over the past year or so, we have gotten to where we call and tell each other about our personal lives and things like that.
Yep.
And that is so important and so fun. And we've had the hard conversations of, where does the contract go from here, and how do we fit into your plan? And I feel like, because of that deep relationship, like we've talked about, we can have true, honest conversations and walk away going, man, they're doing great things. And I hope that we can hang out with them long term. Like,
Right.
that's our goal, is how do we support you to do the great things that you want to do? And I think that that is a piece that is so important to any contract that you have. And being in the grant space, lends more to less transactional and more relationship building, because that's just inherently what we do anyway, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to say thank you for being a part of our team, because you're just as much part of our team as we are of yours, and we are so glad to share in that with you. And we will have in the show notes kind of a checklist of what to look for in building a contract with a consultant, to help anyone who's thinking about what that looks like and guide you in those decisions. And if you have anything you want to add, feel free, and then we'll wrap it up and say until next time. Or as Arcee says, onward.
Onward, always onward. All right. I thank you, Allison. I've had the best time this morning with you. It's still kind of morning for me, so thank you so much. As always, I'm always happy to be part of the Boyd team. We consider ourselves part of the Boyd team. And yeah, onward always.
All right. Thank you so much, y'all.